Sandra Häuplik from the Technical University of Vienna, Technische Universität Wien. And she was not able to come. She thought she'd be able to come here until about 2 weeks ago when she had some kind of problem and couldn't come. But she did finish the paper and did send me her view graphs. So that's a plus. About it. It was an overview of about half a dozen different design concepts. And this presents one specific design concept. And it's presented from the point of view of the human factors aspects, kind of at a societal level for the crew. And so what Sandra's talking about here is society and experiences in time. She starts with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which created a lot earlier than 1987, and she's actually added a number of items. There's actually only 5 levels in the pyramid, but she's added a few more. The basic underlying one is a physiological need, and then safety, and it goes up the scale to include sense of belonging, and the top item is self-actualization. I don't know where she gets transcendence, but what I like about this presentation is it has a lot of novel and original thinking in it. And she shows the issues you have to deal with in the lunar environment, the environmental threats, radiation, micrometeorite, and so on. So she's working with this sort of stimulus response model. That's one way I perceive it, where there's an interaction between the society and the crew, has stimuli on the left, the triggers, and then the actions and reactions on the right, and potential conflicts with the environment, or perhaps on the crew, and the role of the architecture, which is, first of all, in her view, perception of the environment, and 2 aspects, which is arranging the people in space, physically, and then arranging the space itself, which in her analogy, or her dichotomy here, is 2 people shaking hands, and then versus a city for the overall arrangement of space. Now, this slide shows a model of the lunar-based habitat that her team created, and it's based on a series of requirements that really derive from spatial perception and modeling spatial habitability. And they made a couple of models, a motion demonstration model at one scale and a model of the interior at another scale. And I don't really understand the motion model. I don't understand the motion model, but here, this is their mission scenario. The purpose of their base is mining. They want to mine a number of resources on the moon, most especially helium-3, which would then be transported back to Earth for use in fusion reactors. I can comment about that separately. I'm very skeptical about going to the moon for helium-3, but that's their goal. And they're planning to mine units 400 meters by 400 meters by 1 meter. That is to say, they're going to mine in units of 160,000 cubic meters of lunar regolith. And then they're going to do it at a rate of 5 cubic meters a week. So it's going to take them a long time. And you can use robots to do this, and they're also going to generate a number of other resources: hydrogen, water, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen. And they have a team that had a team member, Paul Van Stoestand, who's a Dutch citizen, who's a graduate student at the Colorado School of Mines, who created this scenario here for them. And it's quite modest. You can see how modest it is. Because in 1 year, they're going to mine 10 or 11 of those squares, so they're going to mine 1.6 million cubic meters of regolith in a year on the moon, and then approximately double that in 4 years, or more in 4 years. And the habitat itself is meant to move. The mobile habitat to support the mining is such a large area. They want to move the habitat to follow the strip mining operation. And the habitat would move by rolling 50 meters once a week. And I don't understand their system, but I'll show it to you. And then every 6 months, there's a new crew of 6 people. And they ship back the helium-3 to Earth. And they would have develop settlements in the mining areas. I don't understand why, after they removed the meter of regolith, they would consider it better for living than before they removed it. But anyway, the habitat moves by rolling, what they call by mass displacement. And like I said, I don't understand it. Here's a structural cross-section of the fabrication of the walls. And so we don't have a physical or laser pointer here, but the basic idea is that there's two spheres. There's an inner sphere and an outer sphere, and they can counter-rotate and rotate independently. And so you have water on the outer layer here is radiation shielding, and then all the protection for structure and micrometeorites and so on is this thin layer here, which kind of baffles me, because that's where you need much more impact absorption. And then there are aero cushions and motion windows. There are windows in some of these sections here. And then there's what they call slider water, which is number 4, which is in this interstitial layer here. So this part here is liquid filled, and they're using the water as part of this mass displacement system, and it's different from the water that's in this outer sphere here, part of the sphere here. And then this inner sphere is made out of inflatable, rigidized, 3-dimensional structure with an embedded aerogel and thermal control system. And this, as I said, this is a very novel concept. And the way it deploys is they build up the interior components with a machinery deck, an airlock, 3-dimensional structure is inflated and rigidized. Then the radiation shielding is installed somehow. The water, which I guess they mine, and they insert, and then finally install the interior fittings. So this team spent a pretty considerable amount of effort on considering the aspects of view from the habitat and views on the inside to the outside and views within the habitat. They seem to be familiar with the work in quantitative modeling, spatial habitability, particularly isovists, and perceived spaciousness that's mostly, and there's a center at the University College London that has developed a lot of quantitative methods for this, and it's used in a number of architecture schools and environmental design programs. So they're looking at a virtual window, which I take to be some sort of flat panel display, a local view, the habitat from the outer perimeter of the habitat, and then out from the habitat to the lunar environment, which then both of this physical and virtual windows are intended to expand the horizon. Now here's a sort of an architectural section elevation of the whole concept, and this is the sort of point very much you get from Professor Bill Hillier at University College London about observing without being observed and observing while being observed in terms of comfort. He's actually done studies to look at where people will go into a public park or a plaza or a living room and sit down, where people choose to sit in terms of where their comfort level is and how the people like to be sort of detached observers and not right in the middle of circulation. And he has it down to a fine size. So I think that that's where this is coming from. This deals with privacy and territoriality and a sense of control. Now the internal functions are this machinery deck, which has a rescue vehicle. I don't understand why the rescue vehicle is on the bottom. It's sitting on the lunar surface. I don't understand why the rescue vehicle is back here. There's a group deck, group activities deck, which I presume includes the galley and the wardroom. And then there's the so-called private islands, which are the sleeping quarters and hiking facility. And then there's the so-called chill-out deck, which is, I gather, kind of a lounge. So there are distinctions between the public and the private levels. The lower level is the public level, and it includes the galley, food preparation, comm center, airlock, EPA equipment, so on, and a lab. The upper private level is the crew sleep compartment. So you can see there's space for 6 crew cabins, and they innovate by having a removable or demountable partition in the middle here, so you can have a double bed for couples who are 2 single rooms, or people who are not a couple. And there's also a work configuration, and I guess this is a workstation here. And then there are also what appear to be 3 separate hiking facilities. So each of these, it appears that each of these sleep quarters comes with a private storage and bathroom area or hiking facility that's twice the size of the room. So I'm not really sure how they arrive at those floor area requirements.
It's the same size.
What?
Same size.
No. See, if you have a single room here, you have a bath that's twice as big, although it's the same size as a double. Anyway, and then this here again, she emphasizes the seeing and being seen aspect, and the one-way visual access to the seeing without being seen. Sandra puts an X here on the up arrow. So you can view the public area from the private area of the habitat, which I think is very insightful sort of approach. Then there are what she calls cognitive strategies, which include the motivation, physical and virtual well-being of the crew. And there's a deployable sports deck, which appears in cross-section. It's not exactly clear where it is. I mean, it appears in class, not exactly clear where it is in cross-section, but it's sort of in here, where it has the ball sports and the hopping and the climbing. And there's some sort of treadmill, like a hamster treadmill, for running here. I'm not really sure what that is.
I think the image of being a hamster is sufficient.
Is what?
Is quite sufficient. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I like that.
And so the conclusion and forward-looking view of this is that the environment should be responsive to the crew, that they're working on prototypical implementation. The hardware and software is intelligent in the sense that it senses what's going on inside. It applies new architectural strategies, and I think virtual reality uses virtual reality augmented space. And she concludes, new technologies, materials, and architectural strategies need to be implemented to build what's great about this is that this was a group of students, principally, who, or entirely, who worked on this one. There were some professionals who worked on some of the other concepts from the workshop, who came up with a totally innovative, if perhaps somewhat naive concept. You know, they did their own research and they came up with a completely fresh approach. And there are a few points here that I think are really excellent. The mass shifting movement system is really quite charming, but they don't say, she doesn't say anything in the paper or in the view graphs about how they control the direction that it rolls. Any questions? Comments?
What's the source of the water?
Oh, they mine it.
On the moon.
On the moon, yeah. That's where the 1.6 million cubic meters of regolith goes. Actually, if the estimates for the lunar south pole are correct, it's a 1% ore, so you'd have to mine approximately 100 cubic meters of regolith to get 1 cubic meter of water by volume, not by mass. I don't know what the volume of that is, but I suspect that the total water volume is at least 10 cubic meters to surround that sphere, the thickness they indicate, maybe more. So that's a minimum of 10 metric tons of water, probably more. Probably 30 or 40 metric tons, I should say. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I'm going to hang out here in case anybody shows up wanting to see this presentation again in 5 minutes. Now, I want to remind you all that we have the second half of this session tomorrow, 10 a.m., same place, and then the panel discussion for all the authors in this session will be 11 a.m. here, and we have 2 aerospace architecture sessions in the afternoon. One this afternoon starts at 2 p.m. here, and then the second one is which is habitats and surface construction, I think, is the topic, and then tomorrow's is the International Space Architecture session. Okay, thank you all for coming. Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to this session on human requirements, or human support for long-duration space flight. The author, Sandra Häuplik, was unable to attend the conference today, so she sent me her view graphs. The paper is written and it will be on the conference CD. And basically, this presentation is one of the projects from the European Lunar Base workshop that was held in Vienna in April of this year. And before I go on, I should just say that this session is organized by the AIAA Design Engineering Technical Committee, Aerospace Architecture Sub-Committee, and if you're interested in our technical committee, we have brochures here. So, and I'm Mark Cohen, I'm the session chair. So, what Sandra does is she approached to this project, or this aspect of this project, from the point of view of human requirements at the societal level of the crew as a whole. And she defines this as society plus the experiences plus time. And she starts from Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which he represented as a pyramid. And we actually published it long before 1987. And she's kind of added to it. The original pyramid has 5 levels, but she's added several more. The basic level is physiological needs, and then safety, and then sense of belonging, and the top one is self-actualization. And she's addressing concerns about the hostile lunar environment, protecting the crew at the physiological level, and there's also the safety level as an impact on the crew microsociety. And these threats are you're familiar with radiation, extremes of temperature, vacuum, micrometeorites, 1/6G. So she's talking about society and architectural spaces, as well as society in space. And she has this sort of stimulus response model that she's proposing, where you have a stimulus, which is a triggering stressor or stimuli, and then an action or reaction to that, which can result in conflicts or needs to process cognitively or evaluate. And then she has this sort of dichotomy between arranging people in space at the micro level and arranging space itself, or the overall pattern of settlement, or the city of arranging space around people. And she sees this as being a kind of a dialogue between architecture and the society, and she places a very great importance upon perception, the role of perception in this paper. Now, she is largely addressing spatial perception and to some extent navigation through spaces in the habitat. They built several scale models of this habitat. Here's one of them, which is a spherical model showing the various levels of the interior, plus a suggestion of some of the activities. And it actually built a model for motion demonstration, which I don't believe this is that one. I believe this is a model of the interior built at 1/50th scale. And this is their mission scenario. The purpose of this particular lunar base concept was to support mining on the surface of the moon. And they had a graduate student from the Colorado School of Mines on this team, Paul Van Stoostant, who was the one who put together the mining objectives for them. And the goal, the main economic goal, is to produce helium-3, and I can talk to you separately about the feasibility or the reasonableness of going to the moon to mine helium-3 separately, but I'll just present what they propose here. They're proposing to mine helium-3, hydrogen, water, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen in some fairly considerable quantities from the lunar regolith. And they're proposing to mine in these square areas 400 meters square by 1 meter deep. So they're going to mine in units of 160,000 cubic meters of lunar regolith. And it's not really clear to me the rate at which they're going to move, but I guess the habitat's going to move 5 meters a week, or actually, I think that's the rate at which the habitat moves. Not really clear. And this is one square is quite modest. They're actually planning to mine 10 or 11 of these 400 meter squares a year, which means they're talking about mining 1.6 million cubic meters of lunar regolith a year, which is ambitious. Here on this page, the habitat moves 50 meters a week. And there's a crew of 6 people who change every 6 months for a new cruise ship, and they ship back the helium-3 that they've mined. And they also propose to have permanent settlements in the mined areas, and it's not explained in the paper why they think it's appropriate, after they move 1 meter of regolith, that would be a better place to put a lunar base, a different, more permanent lunar base. Anyway, the system of movement is what they call mass displacement, where there's a mass. This is sort of a free, I don't exactly call it a free body diagram, but it's a kind of a body diagram where there's this mass that can shift over, and then the whole sphere is supposed to roll. And there's no statement anywhere about how they control the direction or the speed of rolling, or what happens if they get to the top of the slope and the sphere takes off. But Anyway, it's a very novel concept for moving a habitat across the surface. Now, they've given us some structural details on the fabrication of this shell. The outer layer here, layer 1, is the structural elements, the Kevlar fiber and micrometeorite protection, and some insulation and what they call light regulation. Apparently this is meant to be translucent, this layer. Then the next layer is a water radiation shielding layer here. These are water tanks made out of some transparent material. And then these aero cushions, not clear on what those do, but they're part of the motion system, and they're the windows for seeing, make it easier to see through than having to see through the entire meter or so of water. And then there's number 4 is the so-called slider water. And I should point out that these are 2 separate spheres that are that can move independently of each other. The inner sphere can counter-rotate against the outer sphere, and then there's a certain amount of water here, which I guess is part of the mass displacement movement system. And then finally, the interior sphere has an inflatable, rigidized 3D structure with embedded aerogel for perhaps for more insulation and protection. And the deployment system that they propose is, after they landed on the moon, that they first deployed the so-called machinery deck, and then inflate and rigidize the 3-dimensional spherical structures. And then, after they've mined enough water, which is probably on the order of 30 or 40 metric tons, I would guess, they pump that into this layer here, and then they finally outfit the interior. And they do this all on the moon. The surface is all kind of built in place. Now, Sandra placed a great deal of emphasis upon the perceptual aspects of this environment, and she seems to be familiar with the work in quantitative modeling of spatial habitability and perceived spaciousness and isovists that are a growing area in architectural design research and environmental design research, and particularly the approach that's taken by the research group at University College London, where Professor Bill Hillier is the principal investigator or the director of their center there. And so what she talks about is several different types of windows. There's the virtual window, which is sort of I guess a flat panel display that can give you a view of the Earth or outside. Then there's a local view inside the habitat, and finally a local view out of the habitat to the moon's surface. And she shows these diagrams with these yellow arrows. And the purpose of this is to expand the horizon. And this architectural section elevation shows how the concept works in terms of privacy, territoriality, and user control. And the basic concept here is that there are some places in private cabins where crew members can observe without being observed, and other places where there's a two-way interaction where you are observed and you observe at the same time. The way this cross-section works is that original machinery deck, so-called, is down here, and it includes a rescue vehicle, and I do not understand why the rescue vehicle is at the bottom of this whole configuration. It seems to me that that's not where you would want it. You want it on the top, or on, somewhere where you don't have all the mass sitting on top of it, so you can get it out of there. There's a group deck, group activities deck, which includes the galley, the wardroom, and work areas, the laboratory, and then a private deck here with the group cabins and showers and piping facilities. And there's a chill-out deck, which is kind of a lounge. The total height of this interior is about 10 meters, I think, inside structure. Now, here are plans of the private upper deck and the public lower deck. And you can see the layout of the functional work areas, the airlock and the EVA equipment. And then the privacy, the upper private level has relatively spacious crew compartments. There's each of these trapezoidal cells represents a crew cabin. And here they're single bed configurations. And here it's a double where there's a demountable partition that can be removed so two crew members can share a suite together. And then it appears that the hygiene facility and private storage, as it's called, is this area. So it's equal in size to two private cabin units. So, and there's appear to be three of them. So each pair of each pair of bedrooms gets a private bath. And here she reiterates this concept of seeing and being seen as a form of interaction, and then one-way visual access, observing without being seen. She puts an X on this black arrow here. And Bill Hillier has done a number of research projects where he's observed where people choose to go and to sit to observe people in public parks and lobbies and living rooms, and has documented how people like to kind of sit and be detached from people moving around, observe the crowd go by, have a certain amount of privacy where they're sitting even in a public space. People will, one of his studies he found that people would choose the park bench behind the low planter rather than the one without a planter in front of it. So I think she's using some of that research here. And she talks about cognitive strategies, which are, I guess, focused on mental health, through motivation, physical health, both through physical and virtual measures. And one of these is what she calls a deployable sports deck, which is in here where they have various recreational activities, such as playing ball sports or soccer, climbing, hopping, and running. She suggests this sort of hamster treadmill that you run inside. So her conclusion is that a space habitat of this sort must be a responsive environment, needs to be developed through prototype design. The hardware and software must be able to sense what's going on inside the habitat and respond to it. The space should be augmented with virtual reality and displays of other places, and a variety of new architectural strategies. And she concludes, new technologies, materials, and architectural strategies will need to be implemented to build living, intelligent environments that are able to respond to the changing complexities of a mission. And what I really like about this presentation is that this project was done by a group of students who had no real previous experience or exposure to space architecture, to space mission design. And they came up with a very novel and innovative concept. And even though some of it is not practical, it's nice to see the fresh thought. And I think that some of her ideas about creating an environment that affords the type of amenities of spatial perception and human interaction is very good. And when we're up to doing a 10-meter clear interior diameter habitat, it's certainly something we should include. Any questions? Yes, Alex?
Seems to me, and maybe I missed it, that a lot of her spatial direction here is a juxtaposition of positive and negative space. Did she cite any research about that, or is it purely intuitive?
She doesn't cite much research at all. I'm only inferring where she got most of the stuff she cites. That she uses, rather. I'm guessing.
But you see what I mean about the closed elements arranged in a sort of naturalistic way inside of the sphere.
Well, it is sort of naturalistic, but actually it's a fairly rigorous interior plan and cross-section. I mean, it's been clearly thought out very, very carefully to create the view angles and the next step if one was doing the Bill Hilliard thing is you would apply his software to a 3D CAD model and you quantify the perceived spaciousness of the different view angles and determine how good it was according to his criteria.
Is his work like Jim Wise's?
That's where Jim Wise got it from. Okay, thank you all for coming. I'd like to remind you that we have the second half of this session tomorrow, 10 a.m. here in the same room, and then the panel discussion for all the authors at 11, and then we have 2 more aerospace architecture sessions. The one this afternoon meets here at 2 p.m. That's the habitats and surface construction session, and then tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. we have the international space architecture session.
All of you. I suppose you all know that this is session 47, and
Use the
it's
microphone.
being offered by the Space Architecture Sub-Committee of the AIAA Design Engineering Technical Committee. We have some brochures. If anyone cares to take one at some point, they're right here on the desk. And is this working? Yes. We have a couple of gaps in the schedule this afternoon, which I should tell you about now. The second paper is not going to be presented, nor is the last paper. And so that's going to move our panel discussion up a half an hour from 5:30 to 5 o'clock. And we'll have a gap of a half an hour at 2:30 where you might want to go to another session and then come back. Which turns out to be kind of interesting, leaving the remaining papers all to concern robotics or Colombano. And he has an undergraduate degree in physics and a PhD in biophysics. He's been at NASA Ames for 23 years, working in closed ecological systems in artificial intelligence. He was working on the first expert system in space, PI in a box, is that
Right.
Principal Investigator in a box? And he's also been working on bio-inspired robotics. He's a part-time architecture student, which makes him a very exotic creature. He's working at night towards an architectural degree. It might be his Italian blood, well, predictably, but we hope it's a contagious disease, and we're very interested in how he's going to contribute to the field of architecture. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Sure, can you hear me? Still not. Okay, I'm hearing now. Okay, today I will talk about a concept which I named Robosphere. And it's an idea of self-sustaining robotic ecologies and how they might pave the way for planetary exploration, human planetary exploration. First, I want to talk about how we generally handle exploration right now. It's a kind of one-shot exploration, and how we should go towards infrastructure building. The challenges to that for surface planetary exploration. How modularities of sustaining robotic ecologies could help in this area. How they could help create a pathway to human presence. I would also dare to say something about architecture in the context of robotics. And I say I put it in quote because I know that some real architects here are probably going to nail me to the wall for the things I say, but I'll try it anyhow. And I will kind of conclude with what the Robosphere concept is, and okay. So. it's clear that robots are going to be first in space, everywhere, because we're always going to try and find out what's there to make us safe. And so we definitely accept the general goal that we want to send robots to understand the environment to be explored. We're not yet considering seriously the use of robots to build application complex for humans and to utilize the resources. But I don't mean seriously consider is that certainly a lot of people are speculating and thinking about these things, but there is no plan at NASA right now to build stuff on Mars yet. We are still considering just sending robots to explore terrains. And okay, the one thing we all want to do is certainly to extend robotic life as it is, and we'll say a little bit more about that. Then building infrastructure, how we would like to organize robotic ecologies, maintain that infrastructure, and then piggyback on top of that the ability of humans to go there and use what's already been built. Okay. As you know, we send robots to Mars. They last for a few weeks, months, then they just die. That's that. And that's the best we can do, unfortunately. But definitely would be nice to be able to have robots that can last a much longer period of time. It costs a lot of money to send robots there, and to have them last only a few weeks or months is not is undesirable if you could do better. So I would like to propose some ideas in how we might be able to do better. And fundamentally, the idea is to build an infrastructure there, which every time we send a mission, we add to, instead of considering that a finite mission, a one-shot approach. So the question is, what kind of infrastructure could those be, and how do we ensure that they continue surviving? Okay, I'm kind of I'll give you a scenario for a starting point. And the idea is to use modular robots. So suppose we have two spider-like robots that are built of snapping pieces, and one module breaks down, and the other spider comes along and helps the first spider to undo the module and put in a new one. And assuming that we could send fresh modules, we could seed modules in parts of the Martian surface, and these robots could continue doing that indefinitely, in principle. We could also see areas of interest with power stations, solar chemical, that the robots would use to recharge themselves. This is just a general broad picture. I'll go into a little bit more details. And okay, so that's kind of a starting point. Then you can start differentiating categories of robots. Some of them the mechanics that do the modular swapping. Some are the explorers. Some are able in time to even repair some of the broken modules. Anyhow, over time we bootstrap an ecology until we need little material from Earth. At first we send the full modules, then we send whatever is needed as the system becomes more sophisticated. I consider that a self-sustaining robotic ecology, and it's an ecology as opposed to, say, robotic colony, because we're exchanging matter and energy, not just information and organization. And we'll call that Robosphere. I'll go back to the name and why. Okay, back to the longevity idea. the longevity of the spacecraft has been varied and limited by available energy. The Pathfinder lasted 83 Martian days. Sojourner, the little robot, was still alive when the lander died, and we don't know when exactly it died after the lander, because it could communicate back. And unfortunately, Mars polar lander negative because of mistakes that were made, but it was supposed to last only for a month or two. The MERS, the Mars exploration rovers that are going now are designed to last for about 90 days. Now, we go to the Viking landers. They were launched in '76. They lasted for a long time, and that's because they were nuclear powered and with RTGs. And so it's clear that using nuclear power would really help extend the longevity of spacecraft. But there are risks. Some are real, some are more perceived and political. And clearly, if we could ultimately produce power in situ, either solar more efficiently with larger plants or by with chemical processes, we would solve the problem. Now, problems for longevity are not only energetic, but certainly mechanical. You own cars, you all know they break down. And so, I mean, energy is conceptually much easier to deal with. We can find ways to deliver it now. But mechanical breakdowns are both a practical and a conceptual challenge. And the idea of obsolescence must also be dealt with. I mean, things do get old. So, again, I kind of go back to the idea that robotic teams capable of visual repair are a possible answer. And now, we have certainly a biological proof of concept that limited self-repair is possible. And so the biology itself serves as a model, potential model for robotic implementations. And of course, the biological ultimate self-repair is self-reproduction. And there are people who are thinking even in terms of robotic self-reproduction, but I'm not getting there yet. This is a little bit even far-fetched for me. But we can start now with some modular robotic systems to create the scenarios where self-repair becomes possible. And so with the ability to autonomously swap faulty modules or obsolete modules for new ones is possible. It's a logical first step. It's not really too far into the future. And either the obsolete here is to deal in part with the idea of obsolescence. If you can maintain, you are likely to be able to maintain the interfaces between modules for much longer periods of time than the modules themselves. You know, if you now have a new, more powerful CPU, but you modularize it, you put it in a module that can fit the older ones, you're able to upgrade your system in time. Here are some examples of modular systems that we're working on. This one is a NASA Ames, we call it SnakeBot. It was based on a modular system started by Mark Ian called Polybot. Here is the old, I'm sorry, I can't point to everybody, see what I'm pointing. The one on the left is one we have at Ames. The other one is actually, it's a lighter version. And the ideas for this was to make it as an alternative to regular rover exploration, or to go into small spaces in aircraft, or for space structures, crawling around places. Here are some concepts here. As I just said, one is polygon trusses. The other one in simulation here also the pieces could come apart and come back together depending on the need. The idea of self-configuration, actually, things being able to come apart and together autonomously has been worked at also. This is a system called Conroe, developed at University of Southern California by Shannon and Will. And you see it has just 1 degree of freedom, and on the sides it has these pins that are attached to different parts of the same module. And with this, the system is able to go from the snake-like configuration on the left to the spider-like on the right. Unfortunately, I don't know if video to show you, but it's really neat. You can see the snake kind of move its tail and attach it to its body, attach it apart, and becomes a leg. So the other part of the tail will do that, and slowly it turns itself from snake to spider. It's really neat. Okay. The fact that you need a fairly complex system already, and these types of abilities and energy to be able to self-maintain means that the kind of the minimal unit to last for a long time on the Martian surface cannot be a single robot. It has to be a little outpost, a small colony. And so they would have to have means of energy production, more added functional specialization in the robotic units, shelter, and the idea also that there will be coordinated local and earth-guided control. These colonies do not have to be independent. We would monitor them from Earth. What has to be independent and autonomous is the ultimate repair action. But the recognition that something is broken, a high-level command can be going to robot A to go and help fix robot B. But we cannot telecontrol from Earth because there's at least a 20-minute delay, and that makes it impossible. So in time, of course, the level of autonomy would increase, but we do not need ultimate autonomy because we can still control at a high level from Earth, as I said. Okay. Interestingly, if we are able to have energy sources on the surface and the robots are able to survive for long periods of time and they are able to build shelter, then much of what is needed for humans is there already. So at this point, it seems like we have to, at the point where we want to send humans, we have to change our mission style and start all over. Now, if we have created this infrastructure already on the surface, sending people would be very easy. We already have energy. We can have shelter. We could have the robot programmed to have some food ready too. Cultivate perhaps, and probably there would be cooks though, spaghetti. But so I mean, it's clear that building a if you were an Italian mission, they would have to have spaghetti ready for them. I'm Italian, I can say that. Okay, it would be certainly more costly to take that kind of approach, but it would really start us on a long-term commitment to planetary exploration, and risk of failures would be really very small because essentially, if you send parts and the system is able to use them, and then you really do not risk the mission that just fails. You can sending parts is a success. And you can certainly test that those kinds of systems overall, these kind of colonies are functioning. You can test the functioning on Earth. Okay, so ultimately you could accumulate human presence and natural evolution of the robotic infrastructure. You could produce oxygen and food, and everything would be ready for the arrival of the crew. There already had been some flight demonstration for in situ propeller production, which unfortunately was put on one of these probes that failed, and then it has to be tried again. But that idea certainly is possible. Okay, here, because I was dealing with an audience of potentially architects, many other architects, so I started with something with architecture. And, okay, robotic architecture can mean, maybe I'll jump to I'll jump to this one already, because it's really stuff. It can mean that we have to deal with architecture that's built by machines. We have to deal with architecture where the machine is an architectural medium itself, like ships and planes. But also with the idea that as machines become intelligent, more and more intelligent, high level of cognition, they become consumers of architecture. So do we have to start thinking in terms of building things that will be acceptable and pleasing and useful to machines? And that is probably something that people want to agree with me on. But fundamentally, what I see is that the human and machine symbiosis is going to become more and more tight. And the clear distinction between what are human needs and machine needs are going to become much more fuzzy. And so as architects, people have to start thinking in terms of both machines and human needs in a very coherent way. So in a sense, architecture becomes part of a natural integration process of robotic and human systems, and it has to arise as part of the progress of the process. The other thing is machines are building the architecture, and if I think of biological system, even as architects, you like it, you say, look how beautiful the shell is, for instance, an architectural thing. The shell, nobody designed on a drafting board. It came out of the need of an organism to survive. So the architecture, I think, of the future in this kind of system would become more like the architecture of biology, in which you are not designing the ultimate structure that something fits in, but you're designing the process that creates this structure. So there is my statement for a semi-architecture student I am. Okay, let me just, 1 second. So, the idea of Robosphere is derived from the concept of Biosphere 2, which has been an experiment in how you could put organisms and humans in a system and see how long they can survive, how small can you make an ecology. I would like to build a Robosphere in which you put robots and see, give them what they need in terms of materials and modules, and see how long the system survives. And with that idea in mind, I held the workshop last year at NASA Ames, and we're organizing another one in next year. So if anybody is interested in that concept and trying to develop it, let me know. You can use help. Okay, I can probably stop this. I'm kind of reviewing what I've been saying already. Again, I talked about the first 4 bullets essentially. Now, there's also the ability potentially to go into self-production of machines. very speculative, but in principle still possible. And ultimately, what is very, very important is multi-scale robotics, where you begin to go into the realm of nanotechnology, micro robots, and then you see how your robotic ecology involves robots at different scales, including the robotic equivalent of our bacteria and things that we live with as biological things. So just like we have a biological system where there are several scales coexisting in ecology, there could be several scales coexisting in a robotic ecology as well. So in conclusion, again, we propose that we would very try and build an infrastructure on the planetary surface. By the way, the infrastructure is being built in terms of satellite and communication, but not on the surface. We'd like to push for the concept of self-sustaining robotic ecology as a way to build and maintain that kind of infrastructure. I think we're on the path. There's current ideas in modular and reconfigurable robotics that show that it's possible, in principle, to build such a system. We talked a little bit about architectural concepts and how they might be affected by these type of systems. And finally, how there might be even more esoteric notions of robotics that will come into play, such as self-reproduction and multi-scale in nano robotics. I'll take questions. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you, Benson. I want to say that we're very pleased at the turnout for this session, and for those of you who didn't arrive at the beginning, we've had a cancellation for the second paper, but we're going to get roaring again in another half an hour. So please, all of you come back or stay here and chat amongst yourselves if you would like. But we're going to have Scott Howe, who is the chair of the Architectural Subcommittee and a professor at the University of Hong Kong, next.